feel really humbled because I know what that character means to so many people.
Rob, who plays Elrond, we were talking last night about Children of Hurin and kind of those books and like Beren and Luthien, and I love those books. They're kind of my favorites.
Yes, I know I should be a wizard. Yes, I know I should be finding a staff, but this nagging feeling that actually the most important thing, or that I don't care about any of that stuff. I've just got to be true to this friendship.
Nori, no!
I mean, congratulations to you on your performance. And of course, I've got to ask the question. When did you find out about that big Gandalf reveal? What was your reaction?
Yeah, so obviously, through the whole of season 1, I didn't even really know I was going to be playing a wizard. So it was only at the very end of that we were sure that he became a wizard, or he would be a wizard. And then through all of season 2, I knew a lot about what people out here were saying in the real world, and friends and family, and people on the internet talking about all their theories as to who he might be. And I obviously didn't know myself for a long time, and I was quite happy with that, because I was really comfortable playing the truth of the stranger's journey, which is really landing in Middle Earth to now. That's all we know of him. He hasn't really gained much past memory of what it was like, in the thousands of years, his eternity before this. But so really all I've been doing is living in the present with him, and that's been a great way to act. But when we got to the end of using Tom Bombadil's interior, which was a set in one of our studios, the showrunners called me and they said, so listen, the next scene we're going to have to film because Tom Bombadil's set has to be broken down so we can do the next set in that studio. And it means that you're going to be filming something out of context, out of chronological order. And it also happens to be the scene in which we learn what his name is going to be. And so I was like, whoa, this sounds extraordinary. And so they gave me a little bit of backstory, and they sat me down with Charlotte, the director, and they said to me, okay, people are going to call him, the other beings are going to call him Gandalf. And I was sort of pinching myself, because, I'm a 47-year-old man who has grown up loving the imaginative, I love imaginative worlds. I loved the idea when I was a kid about the idea of being magic. I mean, for a human to be properly magic, looking at a tree and thinking, can I break that branch if I look at it? Or can I make that flower bloom if I look at it? All these kind of things. And suddenly to be playing a character who on the screen can sort of do those, although he hasn't really learned how to do it yet, but it has that sort of energy, is a real wonderful moment. And I think it made me feel that childish excitement, that imaginative wonder. I feel really humbled because I know what that character means to so many people, and I feel hugely honored that the stranger who I love dearly and have taken from sort of his inception, I feel really honored that he has grown enough to be beginning to turn into someone that people will call Gandalf.
Absolutely. And what does this mean, do you think, and what do you hope this means for his potential future? I know nothing is confirmed, particularly about the future of the show.
Eagle rides. No, I don't know anything about the future either. What I really am excited by, if people give me the opportunity to take his story on a bit more, I'm really excited by the idea of how, rather than just playing a character whose future, the horizon on the future broadens, we've got a character whose horizon on the in the past can broaden as well, that he can begin to bring things into his being that have happened 10, 20,000 tens of thousands of years ago, and what that means to him. I've really enjoyed, I've read quite a lot of the Tolkien source material on the journey through this whole project the last sort of 4.5 years, and I love the idea that bits of that might fragment and come through into his being, ideas about the singing into being of the universe, or, even stories about the Silmarils, or, just wonderful things, the exodus of the elves, all these things that happened ages ago that might suddenly come back to him, and might influence how he behaves in the future. I'm really excited by that as a possibility.
Markella, if I could begin with you, I was dying to know your reaction to that big reveal in episode 8, the Gandalf reveal. Stranger, when did you find out? What was your reaction?
I mean, I have had my suspicions for a little while now. I think in the first in the very first rehearsal I actually asked if Daniel was playing Gandalf, and just silence. But I think what was really amazing is that after that moment, because of what the wonderful Dan said about the fact that the stranger doesn't know who he is, and so we can't expect to know who he is, and we just have to follow him along on his journey and help him find his purpose and his home. So I think that was always the focus, but it was very exciting when we found out. We found out quite late in the process. I think it was this season, at the end of the season, that we found out. So yeah, we found out when you found out, just before you found out, pretty much.
It's bold to ask so early on. I love it.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, I had definitely learnt my lesson on that.
Yeah. Amazing, love it. And so where do you see potentially in future seasons, hopefully, that relationship between Nori and the stranger / Gandalf going? I mean, it's so strong already.
I mean, I really hope that I think already it's so weird calling him Gandalf now. We already have such a connection. The characters have such a connection, and so I think that they both really want to fight for a better world. And so I just hope that we see them do that together at some point, in however that manifests. Just want to continue working with Daniel as well, so hopefully that happens.
Absolutely. Speaking of fighting for a better world, Cynthia Míriel has had a quite the heartbreaking season, I would say. I mean, the last time we saw her, she was in quite a bad way. What do you hope for her in future, hoping she gets out of this somehow?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, Numenor at this point is in full-blown chaos, and I think, as she sort of tells Elendil that her place is there and that she needs to stay, and she sort of sets him on, his way to his sort of, what his future role is ultimately going to be. I think for her, she's a savvy person. I don't think that the expectation, or at least my hope, is that she wouldn't just wither away in the tower. I think that there's a fight in her, and, she's a force for good. So however she needs to do that, it might be sort of, underground or sort of organizing from afar. But I think that she is very much, planning her own plans. So I think that'd be pretty cool to see her, basically kind of take advantage of the fact that Pharazôn thinks he's got one over on her. And I feel like she's smarter than that.
Yeah, she'll be kind of fighting from the inside, I guess, which I would love to see. It's also amazing to see her, as you say, giving Elendil Narsil, setting him on his journey. What does she know of his destiny at this point? Because I feel like she knows so much more than she kind of ever lets on.
I think really it's more about their shared belief and the conviction in that belief. And it is really, in my mind anyway, about sort of starting a revolution and sort of him being the one to do that, being in the position to do that. But it's interesting with the Narsil of it all, because when we sort of had that moment when we sort of read the script and then actually got to set and saw the sword, it's a wow Easter egg for those in the know. But I did think a lot about, well, I still wanted to have impact and symbolism for those who do not understand the significance of that sword and its place in the lore. And so I thought it was important to really just still make that moment be about him sort of, handing him the tools and setting him on his way. So if you know what that, sword signifies, it's like, oh my God, but it should still have that weight of importance, that it's sort of like a not a changing of the guard, but this sort of passing on of responsibility.
Yeah, so well put. I think that's what I love so much about the series, is it does have that sort of double importance to the fans who know everything and the fans who are coming to this for the first time. Markella, a little bit on that. There have been so many theories again about the Harfoots, and I think particularly they'll continue even more about sort of their potential relation to what we know as the Hobbits. Was there anything in Peter Jackson's films that kind of inspired your performance for the Harfoots?
Well, I mean, I think I'm such a fan of those films, and I think that the actors amazing, and the vision was so strong, and I loved them as a kid. So just acknowledging that was something that was really important. But I think in terms of the Harfoots, they're just set so many years, prior to those events, and the circumstances are so different. So it was really just if anything, it was taking the care and the love that seemed to be put so deeply into the films, into the series, and it, you know, the care that Tolkien has for the characters that he's, you know, written about, and I just think that it was very important to make sure that I was honoring how much people care about these stories and care about these characters. And so to be able to play Nori as a Halffoot and as, you know, an ancestor in some way, that was such a privilege. So I was just focusing on what the Halffoot circumstances were and keeping in mind honoring the lore as much as possible.
You mentioned the fan theories. I'm sure you haven't been able to avoid them. They've been everywhere.
No,
How
yeah.
much was that kind of in your mind when you learned of that reveal, and the fans' reactions, and also potentially even the reaction of Sir Ian McKellen, who I imagine is gonna.
I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, that'd be fun. I think that I think about the fan theories. The thing I loved about them was that so many people came with such different ideas, but they could all back them up through their understanding of the source material, through going back to Tolkien's stories. I love that people had very different views, but they could say, yes, but if you look at this, and then if you go to that, and this is why I believe this. That was one of the, that's when you know you're in a really beloved set of stories there. And that's why I think all of us in the cast and the crew deal, so you know, we every day we come to work, we're as committed as we can be, with as much honesty and integrity as we can be, because the source material is so important to people. Yeah, I've loved them. I mean, I've wondered which way we're leaning. You know, I've wondered, is it blue? Is it, could it be Saruman? Could he still be bad? You know, all these different moments still playing out. It was a joy to find out, and I think I would have been really excited whichever way we'd got. You know, because actually, what a wonderful. And I sort of know who the stranger is anyway, so it's like I had him already. But yeah, learning what he's going to be called, and the fact that he isn't naming himself, I thought that was beautiful. That in fact it's something that he's aware of others sort of bestowing on him, you know, rather than him saying, I am Gandalf with my staff. I think that's a wonderful thing, because he as a character, and certainly I feel this with the stranger, he's learning humility, that idea of self-awareness and the presence in other people's presence, learning to look for the good in them, learning to be there to support them find the best of themselves. You know, all those things are really, really cool.
Yeah, and from what you said, it sounds like you didn't really change your approach to the character with that reveal. But what was it over the course of the season that you really wanted to put across with the stranger?
I reckon that the thing that friendship is such a core thing. I think coming back, one of the things that was so fun coming back to season 2 was the ability to play on screen with Nori and Poppy and Markella and Megan, who play them. You know, to be able to spar with them. We I think through season 1, for all the many reasons, you know, COVID, being in New Zealand, being a long shoot, you know, we became very, very close, and reuniting with them to film again was wonderful. And that, I think, is one of the things that then led me through, you know, the desert with them, the trials that they had, but also the separation. I'd never filmed a scene apart from Megan and Markella, you know, until episode 4. What that made for me, actually, I didn't have to do much acting. I felt lost without them. You know, they had always been somewhere. We had always been picked up at the same time every morning. You know, we'd always been in the makeup truck, and suddenly I wasn't. And so I think that friendship, that yearning to, yes, I know I should be a wizard. Yes, I know I should be finding a staff, but this nagging feeling that actually the most important thing, or that I'd say, I don't care about any of that stuff. I've just got to be true to this friendship. I think that's really, it was both wonderful for me as a real human being, and also for the character. I think it was symbiotically enmeshed, and I was really thankful to have that story.
I mean, this season, the scale has been upped so magnificently. It's an incredible season. What was the biggest challenge for you both taking on, you know, this second installment?
It's interesting because we're sort of in a period of reflection as the show is finally coming out, but we're still sort of very much in the middle of the journey. So there are some days that are really hard, and then when you kind of see the end result, in a lot of ways, like, kind of fades away. You know, maybe like a really difficult day where you were really tired, or, you know, you were in the elements. You know, watching the last 2 episodes, I was genuinely blown away. I was taken aback. And I think those challenges and those hard days are worth it in the end. I mean, when you see the end result, I watched that battle sequence, which I had nothing to do with. So it was easy for me to be like, wow, but I know that was a tough shoot for those involved with that. But to see what everybody collectively achieved, it's like the challenges are worth it. They're kind of what make it, I think. I think you see some of the challenges, but it kind of adds to that tension of, everybody's fighting for something that they feel is important. And so maybe there's that nice parallel as a cast and crew and all of the creatives involved. Like, we're putting our blood, sweat, and tears. We're putting a lot of time and, but we're trying to all come together to make this thing that we just have so much love and passion for. So you see the challenges on the screen. You don't see necessarily our personal challenges that we're all carrying around, but I think there's sort of a nice duality to that like the challenge is kind of what makes it, I think.
And Markella, you mentioned you're a big fan just of Tolkien in general, of the franchise. Are there any particular storylines or big moments that you would be super excited to see adapted in potential season?
Well, we were talking about Rob, who plays Elrond. We were talking last night about Children of Húrin and kind of those books and like Beren and Luthien, and I love those books. They're kind of my favorites. So I would love to see something of that. But I also just think, I'm not sure we'll see, but I just love those as books. So big fan of them.
Yeah, I would be super excited about that as well. I mean, Cynthia, there were so many moments I thought you were not going to make it out alive. There were some moments there. Were there any, reading these scripts, were there any moments that you were concerned for Cynthia? Or do you have, chats with the showrunners for Míriel, or would you have kind of chats with the showrunners to kind of, where they talk out your storyline in a fuller extent?
Not necessarily. I mean, we get the scripts sort of as they're ready to be released to us. We do sort of block shoot a little bit of things out of order. But the hardest, sort of task for me, and the thing that I thought, was really all of our sort of the sea monster, the trial by the sea, and sort of working underwater. And, I feel like I've sort of talked about it a lot, but the reality is when you're doing anything, even if it seems small and you're sort of confronting your own mortality, you're in service to a character, but you're having your real feelings and your real fears come into play, and you're trying to kind of just acknowledge both of those things. So even if it's small to somebody else, if you're terrified of heights, you're terrified, it's your own fear for yourself. And so the benefit of being an actor, sometimes you get presented with these things that you would never choose to do voluntarily, and you learn something about yourself, and you sort of can feel like you triumphed over something. And every once in a while you get that, and the character gets that too, and you're trying to kind of have bless you but you're trying to sort of have that be a truthful thing, and so when it happens, it's quite beautiful. The character and you kind of sort of mesh a little bit, and so you get to see things, again, in watching the last two episodes, appreciating the performances of my castmates, seeing their truths, like we all know each other for the last 4 or 5 years. It's a really beautiful thing because everybody's bearing their soul, and so I hope that the audience is picking up on that as well.